Next up, Alejandro Victores will be speaking about statistics, education, and radiation.
Hi everyone, my name is Alejandro and I'm working with Dr. Kara Leonard on this project. And we developed a couple of surveys looking at biostatistics and radiation oncology training programs. Currently there's no standard for biostats education in RADONC. And we know right now that understanding biostats is important for reading and understanding the literature. It's important for evidence-based clinical care that we provide every day. It's crucial in developing and analyzing original projects, in clinical trial development, and quite practically in passing the boards. And so our objectives with this project were to determine what is important to educators and residents alike, to identify gaps in comfort with biostats, both at the resident and attending level, to explore the gamut of educational approaches across programs and ask who is designing these programs and who's teaching them. And we also wanted to identify barriers to program design. Our methods involved two 10-question surveys, one for program directors and one for residents, and it was distributed to RADONC residents and program directors via the AROPC list. And responses were then collected and analyzed. And so our resident survey included some basic demographic info, such as other advanced degrees, what postgraduate year they were, whether they had formal biostats training. Residents were asked to rate the importance of biostats, to rate self-reported confidence with basic objectives of biostats, things like interpreting a p-value. And then they were also asked how their proficiency is evaluated in their given program, and they were asked to rank barriers to implementing a biostats curriculum in their program as well. And the survey for program directors asked about whether the program had a formal biostats curriculum, type of pedagogy used to teach biostats in that program, how proficiency was evaluated, if no curriculum, whether they had or were planning on having one in the future, and also ranking barriers to implementing curriculum. And we were able to get 12 program director responses as well as 60 resident responses. Our resident responses spanned across all postgraduate years, and 37% of resident respondents had advanced degrees other than their MD or DO degree. And interestingly, 38% of residents reported evidence-based medicine training in residency, and 22% reported a formal biostats curriculum in residency. So quite low numbers if you think about how many residents have exposure to this in their training. In addition, there were clear gaps in biostats education. So 58% of resident respondents stated that they had no formal biostats course in residency. 49% of respondents stated that they had never taken a course in epidemiology, and 33% of residents had never taken a course in biostats at that stage in their training. In terms of evaluation of knowledge, 70% of trainees reported that they were evaluated based on in-service exams, and 44% reported original research work as a mode of evaluation for their biostats prowess. So then, in terms of resident self-reported confidence, we used a 1 to 5 Likert scale with residents being asked whether they strongly agreed or strongly disagreed with a variety of statements. And so on the left, you have average resident responses to 5 statements. And this is adapted from a publication that was done in internal medicine a few years ago, where they took some of these statements and asked internal medicine residents to respond to them. And so it's clear that everyone agreed, to be an intelligent reader of the literature, it is necessary to know something about biostats. There seemed to be clear agreement on that. One of the interesting things, many residents thought, because it is easy to lie with statistics, I don't trust them at all. So in kind of a field that's as evidence-based, where clinical care is being provided on the basis of biostatistics every single day, this is certainly alarming, and certainly an area where we can make real improvement. And of course, everyone reported that given the chance they would like to learn more about biostatistics. Many people reported using statistical information in forming opinions and making decisions in medical care, but it's certainly alarming. And then in terms of confidence with biostats activities, the only area where residents were truly above neutral was interpreting a p-value for a given result. Residents reported self-reported deficiencies in interpreting the results of the statistical method used in research, identifying factors that influence a study's power, or assessing if the correct statistical procedure was used to answer a research question. And these are all critical objectives when you're evaluating other people's research work. So if residents aren't able to report adequate confidence with these activities, they're not going to be good consumers of the literature. And finally, resident results in terms of barriers to biostats education. Resident time constraints was far and away the biggest one. And faculty time constraints were also perceived as a major barrier on the resident side. But then from the program director result, you'll remember that most residents, so 22% of resident respondents stated that they had a formal biostats curriculum in their program. 75% of program directors said that they had a formal biostats curriculum in their program. So, it's very possible that this is true, given, if there was no overlap between the two cohorts, it could have very well been from completely different programs. But if there was sufficient overlap, it's very possible that there's just a huge disconnect in terms of what a program means, what a formal curriculum might mean to either of those parties. And then, who teaches the biostats curriculum? 44% reported that it's taught by program faculty, 44% reported that biostats department faculty from an associated department teach it, and 11% have a self-study curriculum. And lectures ranged anywhere between 1 and 16 lecture modules over a specific period of time. And this is just like an open-ended text response, so we allowed people who identified having a formal curriculum to give a free text response about things that they do for development. And some people said that they developed it based on ABR exam objectives. Others said statisticians developed our curriculum. Others said that it was a faculty member who has separate training in statistics. So there was clearly some variety in terms of who was doing curriculum development. And then in terms of trainee evaluation, 75% of program directors reported that in-service exams were a major mode. Interestingly, 84% of program directors said that original research work was a crucial mode of evaluation. You'll note a discrepancy where 44% of residents thought their original research work was actually used to evaluate biostats. So that seems to be another area where there is a disconnect. And then, interestingly, there's also variation in barriers to biostats education on the program director side. So for program directors, availability of faculty with biostats expertise was the biggest barrier to this kind of implementation. And resident time constraints was actually the lowest barrier that program directors ranked. So perhaps also a disconnect in terms of valuing time from one end to the other. And so in conclusion, it's clear that faculty and trainees recognize the importance of biostats. We see it every day. Trainees do admit to gaps in their own knowledge. We've seen that on these graphs. There's a great deal of variation in the curricula between programs. And so both trainees and faculty recognize that time constraints are a major barrier to biostats education. So this involves probably some self-reflection and searching for that time and determining whether that's important for training. And so for future directions, what should our primary goal be in biostats education in RADONC? What are the key components of what that education should include? How can we improve resident proficiency? Are in-service exams alone enough? Is it just time constraints or is it more? And do trainees who report comfort with biostats have outside degrees or outside education in that field? That's an area where we could definitely identify differences as well. And in addition to questions, I just want to make a plug. Please take our survey if you already haven't, and QR codes are available for both respective parties.